Hello, everybody, and welcome to week 3. In this week's work, we'll be covering chapter 2, which is biological psychology. And so here is your to-do list for the week. Kind of gives you the rundown of what you should be working on. The objectives for the chapter are here. So this is basically setting you up for what you should know as you're going through chapter 2. It's basically the learning objectives. So these are good takeaway points. These also would serve as good sort of study questions. You should be able to answer each one of these at the conclusion of reading the chapter and doing the work for the week. And I would encourage you to do that before you go ahead and try to take the test. Make sure that you're solidly in the know with each one of these. Okay, so for biological psych, what we do is we take a look at everything at the neural level. So how neurons communicate with one another in order to produce action, our thinking, our movements. So motor activity as well as sensation and perception. And so it's going to cover the different roles of the nervous system. The nervous system breaks down into different branches, and each branch does something different. You'll be taking a look at a little bit how it's affected by stress, and how the communication within our body happens. How does our brain communicate with the rest of our body? And what about when we feel something? Is it our brain that's feeling it, or is it the sensation of it? So we'll learn a little bit about the different structure and function of brain anatomy. So you'll be kind of diving into detail about the brain and its different functions and roles and what parts are responsible for what. So this is a very detailed chapter. There are a lot of diagrams and a lot of different figures to show you what's what. I would spend some time committing some of that to memory, okay? Understanding what parts of the brain do what, that's pure memorization. So a great thing to do would be to make some flashcards for this chapter that can help you with that and just be like working on it all week. You don't want to save the reading till the end and then take the test. You'll be having a hard time if you do that. So please make sure that you're spending a good deal of time in the different roles and functions of the brain. Here are your lecture slides, and I also put a PDF of Chapter 2 as well as the Hawk reading, More Experience Equals Bigger Brain. That's Hawk reading 2. This is the last time I'll post PDFs of the books because the expectation is by week 3, end of week 3, you should have your books by then. And remember that I always have both copies on reserve at the Ely Library in case you don't. But there you go. And the videos you're going to be watching are in my psych lab. So if you don't have my psych lab, you're not going to be able to watch these. The one caveat is the videos don't cover any material that isn't already in your book. So basically what the videos are doing is highlighting different things. Like, for example, in this chapter, there's videos on how neurons communicate with one another, the role that neural transmission plays in our thinking, in our behavior, in our moods, in disorders and diagnoses. So there's a lot of videos that help highlight and illustrate the concepts that you're reading in the book. So that's why I highly recommend having my psych lab, so that you can have that as a resource. But the videos you'll be watching are in my psych lab in episode 3, Biological Psych. The discussion for this week centers around the chapter material, so chapter 2, and it also centers around Hawk reading number 2. So you have to have read both the chapter and the Hawk reading before you attempt to answer the discussion question. In the discussion question for this week, you'll be responding to these questions right here that is going to be your original response. You're going to answer these questions about Rosenzweig's research pertaining to how our brain develops based on our environment. And you're going to be citing the Hawk reading. You're also going to be citing the chapter. The chapter talks all about the brain and how it's affected by things we do and the environment that we live in. So you should be integrating some of that into your response. So that's part one, is where you're responding to the discussion questions by just, clicking into here. And then part two, once everybody has posted their answers to the questions, you're going to go in and respond back to 3 other people. And you're going to comment on their answers to these questions. Did they leave anything out? Is there something more they could have said? Are there other examples you can give for what they said? Any way that you can integrate in more information to kind of extend what's being said by other people, that's the way to do it. Okay, so you don't want to just be commenting like, oh, really good post, I like what you said, but you want to extend the dialogue more by giving more information and inputting what you learned. So again, taking what you learned from the readings and kind of spitting it back out into taking a look at what people said. All right, so once you've done the discussion, I highly recommend you use my PsychLab to do the practice quizzes. And then once you've done that, you're ready to go ahead and take the quiz. The quiz is on Chapter 2. And then your exam is going to be on the first 2 chapters, Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. And so the time limit exists. It's 30 questions, 30 minutes. Again, I just want to reiterate, if you were taking this in class, you would have a 50-question test and you would have a 50-minute class period. So it's very doable. Definitely using your notes and your book is prohibited. In fact, if you try to, that's what's going to slow you down. So, the exams are meant to be taken when you've known the material, and you shouldn't be using notes or book to answer any questions. With roughly a minute a question, some are going to be super easy if you've committed things to memory. It's like boom, boom, boom. 10 seconds you can answer one question. Some other questions might require you to think a little bit more, apply your knowledge to a given scenario. So those would be the ones that you'd want to save time on and linger on a little bit more. You can go back and forth between questions, but at the end of the 30 minutes, your time limit's up, and the test will stop, and you'll have submitted wherever you're at. So if you don't finish the test, it'll kick you out. So just be aware of that. And if you're starting the test too close to 11:59 p.m., guess what? When it hits 11:59 p.m., you're kicked out, okay? So my advice to you would be not to start the test at 11:30, or else you're not going to have enough time to finish the test. So leave yourself ample time to get through it. Lastly, if you haven't already done so, you'll need to take the Intro Psych Mandatory Assessment. This is to be completed by Sunday. And you should have received an email from Sona. It might be in your junk mail, so please check your junk mail. Check through thoroughly. The email is what has the instructions on how to complete the assessment. If you're having any trouble or any problem getting the email or opening it or understanding what to do, you can contact Dr. Alex Daniel right here, okay? And he will be able to help you with questions that I cannot. He's the administrator overseeing these assessments, and so he can answer those questions for you. Everyone who's enrolled in Intro Psych received the email, and I got confirmation that every student in the class has received the email. Now, whether or not you deleted it, I can't say. Whether or not it went to your junk mail or your inbox, I can't say. You have to look around for it and see where it is. And if for some odd reason you cannot find it, you got to contact Dr. Daniel so that he can resend that out to you and make sure you get it. So leave yourself enough time to complete this. Make sure you get in there and you try to do it before Sunday, because if you have any problems or issues and it's Sunday, then there's no time for anyone to help you. Okay, so you want to make sure to leave plenty of time in case there's any snags or you run into any trouble. You can go ahead and still be able to get that done on time. Okay, so there it is. There's your kind of week in view. Please let me know, though, if you have any questions going forward. You can definitely email me about anything that you're uncertain about. Thanks, everyone.